So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, peace and blessings be upon our Prophet, his family and his companions. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be upon you all. We have today Brother Cleon, who is going to be talking about his story of Islam and how he came to Islam, inshallah. He's been a Muslim for over 10 years, doing a lot of da'wah, mashallah, and he lives, I think you said you live in Saudi Arabia, right? I was wrong when I said yesterday that you live in Kuwait.
Yeah, I stay in Medina, and I just got stuck in Kuwait. I was here for 2 days in February, and then, the world blew up.
Oh, sorry about that. So tell us, brother. Alhamdulillah. I'm sure that there is a reason for that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make things happen for a reason. So Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. So tell us, brother, before we jump to our present time, tell us about your life before Islam, how it was.
Well, I grew up as a Christian. I went to Christian school. I think maybe it was like the 5th grade. I remember we were doing like a Bible study, and the teacher had me read, and I remember there was a line where Jesus says, "I'm the Son of Man." And so I asked, why does Jesus say he's the Son of Man? Why doesn't he say he's the Son of God? And the teacher told me that it was my fault for not believing, to don't question, to just believe. And that was probably the beginning of where I started actually exiting Christianity. By the time I had got out of high school, I remember thinking maybe I'm a Jew, right? Because the Jews say Jesus isn't the Son of God, and I hoped there was a God.
Right.
So I called the synagogue to talk to the rabbi and see if he would explain to me I didn't really know what did Judaism believe. And he asked me if my mom was a Jew. And I said, no, of course not. And so he told me I wasn't able to become a Jew. And so at that time, we're talking probably like 85. I was going to college. Atheism was very big at that point.
Right.
We had the Big Bang, and we had all these theories that could explain existence where didn't need God to become part of it. And I thought, well, these guys are a lot smarter than me, so there must be more. And I became an official agnostic. I don't believe there's such a thing as an atheist. Even I think it was Christopher Hitchens, when he got cancer and was going to die, he said, I can't pray to God for healing because I would feel too much like a hypocrite. But if you believe, go ahead and pray for me. So he still questioned if God existed, and I think this is the way all atheists are, because how can you know? You just assume probably not, right? That's the way I felt. At that point, I lived my life like there were no consequences, right? It was all about now, feeling good now, immediate gratification, and I lived that way until I was 42. Grew up in California, moved to Minnesota, became Muslim in Minnesota, and I don't want to go into all of my sins, but there were a lot. I could probably tick off practically every box on the list of sins that people do. So, but I felt like I was not a really bad person, although I did do a lot of bad things. I tried to pretend like I lived by the golden rule, where you do unto others as you want them to do unto you. And I did that as long as it didn't interfere with what I wanted. Of course, what I wanted took precedence to the golden rule.
Subhanallah. So, what made you to be interested about Islam? What is the also turning point for you to become a Muslim?
Well, actually, when I look back, I can see that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had sent a few, fishing expeditions, opportunities for me to learn about Islam, and of course, I ran away from. After 9/11, I hook, line, and sinker. I felt 9/11. My opinion, I remember telling my boss when he asked me about it, was, let's go kill them, right? They killed us, let's kill them. I mean, that just seems fair to me. And then I realized that what I believed was probably not the truth. That there were a lot of tricks and a lot of lies going on.
Right.
That and maybe around, say, 2008, I became really sick. I had actually got candida in systemically, and it took a couple of years. I was like going to the Mayo Clinic, and they couldn't figure it out. Finally, they found a bunch of candida wrapping my spine and eating the bone.
Oh my goodness.
And they told me, that you're done. You can't work. You got to go. You got to go to the hospital first of all, right? Because if your spine collapses, you'll die. So you got to come right back to the. Because I did a test. They called me as I was pulling into work and said, "Please come back." And I said, "Well, I've lost so many sick days, I can't come back." She said, "You have to come back." And I said, "Well, look, the way you're saying it sounds like it's something really bad. So you just tell me what it is, and if I determine it's bad, I'll come right back." And she tried to not tell me and say that it was like policy. And I said, "But I don't care about your policy. I'm going to go to work." She said, "Well, here's the deal. You've got an infection in your spine. It could collapse and you'll die." And I said, "See, was that so hard? I'm coming back to the hospital right now." And I spent, several months recuperating from this. And during this time that I was, I spent a few weeks in the hospital, and after that, I was at home. I had this thing they call a PICC line, where a nurse would come and give me intravenous medicine a couple times a day, and that went on for many months. And during this time, I wanted to not waste it, right? I thought, well, I'm not going to watch all this garbage TV, but I'll watch documentaries, with Discovery Channel and things like this. And it was on there, actually, where I don't know what it was about that year, but it was like everything was about Freemasonry and physics, the physics of how the world goes together, the theory of physics, and things like this. And there was a really great show called The Naked Archaeologist. And the Naked Archaeologist really cuts bare, he uses the Bible and archaeology from the Bible. But I think the guy might be a Muslim, because everything really comes back to show you that this is all going towards God, right? The real God, El, right? Or Elohim, as the Judaism calls it, the Bible calls it. And the science, there was the Hubble telescope. Back in the 50s, we calculated how much matter existed in the universe. And we decided, based on that calculation, the scientists, that the universe is slowing down, and eventually it'll stop and it'll come back together. We'll have like a big crunch. And then the Hubble telescope took a look, and it turns out the universe is speeding apart faster than ever. It's not slowing down. It's actually, it's accelerating. That's correct.
Yeah.
What they said is we got to change the model. And the show that I saw that day basically said, it wasn't exact, but basically the percentage was 30% is the matter we see, 70% is what we do not see. And at the same time, the theory of physics, right? Combining quantum physics and what I call like Einstein physics, right? Stuff bigger than an atom, stuff smaller than an atom. They would never go together. When you tried to combine these kinds of physics, the answer always invariably ended up being infinity to the infinity power, which, mathematically means zero. They decided they needed to play with the model, and they added dimensions. So when everything fit together kind of like a glove, physics, right? They had 10 dimensions of real space and 1 dimension of time. And I happened to be watching these shows. It might even have been back to back, because I realized that, well, height, width, and length, that's 30% of the 10 dimensions. And the Hubble telescope is telling us, you know, the matter that we see is 30%. And it was at that point I said, wow, you know what? What is that 70% that we don't see? Maybe that is these parallel universes, which today, you know, I believe is where, like, maybe we would say the jinn live. Maybe I thought that might be heaven and hell or whatever, but I understood that just because I can't see it doesn't mean it isn't real. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that's kind of the basis of being an atheist. If I don't see it, it's not
That's
real.
right, yeah.
So that put a little chink in my armor, so to speak, where I became a bit more open-minded. That same year, this was 2010, a lot of things happened. I don't want to go into all of them because it takes a long time to explain everything. But I saw a miracle. This is probably sometime in September. I don't know exactly. It all got a little confusing. It was kind of a crazy time in my life. But I saw this miracle with my son. And he was 19 at the time. I was picking him up from work. It was like 4 a.m. He was doing the graveyard. We were driving home. I remember we were heading east. And the moon was like really red. Unusually red. He mentioned it. Actually, he brought it up. He said, look at that moon. Have you ever seen it so red? And so I started paying attention to the moon, and it was very large, like God had grabbed it and pulled it close to us. And we talked about that, how strange it was. And while we were looking at it, it reminds me of kind of like the moon from E.T., you know, that big moon that's got the it's like that, right? It's like super large, like a movie star, you know, like from a movie. And it was red like an apple. And then it disappeared. And I was like, well, that's impossible, right? Because I'm very logical. It's impossible. It's behind this tree. We'll go past the tree. We'll see the moon. There's nothing weird going on. We got past the tree, and the moon wasn't there. And I said, you know what? We're going downhill. Even though it's kind of flat, Minnesota, where we were, off in the distance there's some hills. And because it's like on the horizon, the sun is just rising. It must have went behind the hills as we went downhill. So let's pull into the gas station at the bottom of the hill. We'll get some soda pops, and we'll go back to the top of the hill where we saw the moon, and it'll still be there.
That's interesting.
We pulled in the gas station, and the guy pulled in next to me, and he said, did you see what happened to the moon? And I said, thank God I'm not crazy. I thought there was something going on between us, and you know, it wasn't making sense. But, you know, other people were saying this too. So we got our sodas, went to the top of the hill, and the moon was not there. I mean, I had a telescope. I knew what a lunar eclipse looks like. We would watch the asteroids and all of that kind of stuff, you know, because that was kind of like my little hobby, right? Along with the astronomy, the Hubble telescope, you know, we were into all that stuff. And the moon was gone. But, you know, my son and I, we were talking about, you know, how's his life going and his girlfriend and this and that and work. And it wasn't really that big of a deal at that moment. And then I looked up and, you know, like it was at 0 degrees to start with. And then it was at like, I don't know, 11 to 13 degrees off the horizon. And it was a little smaller and it was yellow, like the color of a lemon. I mean, it was like somebody took a magic marker and colored it yellow. And I thought, oh my God, this is a sign.
Right.
This is a sign of a natural disaster. The reason that the moon had disappeared was an asteroid went between us and the moon. And this is the dust of the asteroid making it turn yellow, because it's the only thing that logically makes any sense. While I'm looking at the moon, maybe 10 minutes go by, and while I'm looking at it, kind of like I'm looking at you here on the screen, it's like I blink, and the moon is gone again. And so now, of course, we're like, oh no, this is not happening again. What is really going on? And in a little while, I looked up and there it was again, and it was white, and it was small. And I mean, if you've ever actually done it, if you close one eye and put your thumb all the way out there, your thumb will cover the moon. It's really small in the sky. and it was normal size. You could walk it with your thumb again. But I realized at that moment that it's impossible to have a double eclipse, right? The moon is not on a pendulum swinging back and forth in the Earth's shadow. And even when it is in the Earth's shadow, you can still see it. It doesn't actually disappear from sight. And so I knew that that meant what I saw was a miracle, that only God could do that. And so it was actually at that moment that I became a believer in God. Now, I didn't know who God was. I just knew that he existed, right? Mm-hmm. God Almighty, I called him at that point. So we went home, didn't think a whole lot about it. I mean, yeah, God is real. And so now I started, getting books, different kinds of books, and doing readings of the different things that people say are God, trying to learn. Mm-hmm. It was like the next day, I had, I don't want to go into it, but I discovered that Lucifer is real, Iblis is real, right? And he's got this whole group of people that worship him, and yeah, they're real. They exist, and it works for them, right? I mean, the reason they do it is it's a shortcut to the money, right? Because when you're born, it's written how much money you're going to have. But what is not written is, when are you going to get that money? And so they do this as a shortcut, right? So instead of like, maybe you get $1 billion, but you only have 100,000 until you're 80, and you die at 85, and between 80 and 85, you get the rest of that billion. So you want it at 20 years old. This is why they do what they do. Okay, I get it. But for me, what I understood is that if God is real and Satan is real,
that's right.
That would mean that heaven and hell are real.
And how is this? I'm sorry. And how is this related to Freemasonry? When you said that you were actually interested in that.
That's a discussion for another time.
Okay.
That'll get us on a tangent, and this story here is long enough as it is.
Okay. Inshallah.
So let's just work through this.
No problem. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Inshallah. Yeah.
So I understood that heaven and hell are real. Mm-hmm. Okay? Mm-hmm. And out of this whole thing, the only thing that I knew is I don't want to go to hell. Right? I mean, I know that hell is supposed to be some really bad place. I know what the Bible says. And I know that it doesn't sound good, this lake of fire kind of a thing. Mm. I don't want to go there. Mm. So at that point, I figured I better figure out who God really is. I had read this book. It was called Morals and Dogma. It was written by this gentleman that was the head of the Freemasons back in the 1850s or something like that. It's a very large book. I didn't read the whole book, but I did read parts of it, and part of my research about who is God and what religions. Mm-hmm. And in there is a quote, and this quote is that Lucifer is God. But unfortunately, Adonai is also God. And I know who Lucifer is, right? Lucifer is Iblis. Right. But I thought, well, I don't know who this Adonai is. I've never heard of him before. So maybe that's God. And I think it might have been like, I think Friday we saw this moon thingy. Saturday was like the whole Satan day. Sunday was like figuring things out. And Monday, I prayed, right? And I started feeling weird. I don't know why. It was just like a weird feeling, a little scary, kind of a feeling. It was about midnight. And now my wife at the time, we were atheists. And so I didn't want her to see me pray. So I went outside and I stood next to my house in Rochester, Minnesota. And I prayed. Basically, I said, Adonai, if you're God, I would like to know. Please help me understand. Give me a sign. Show me something to let me know that you're actually God.
So that was before you were introduced to Islam. So you were just talking to God, Allah.
I think everybody was introduced to Islam on 9/11.
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Everybody asked me if I knew about Allah, then it's like, of course I knew about Allah, right? I mean, it's people yell Allah Akbar and they blow themselves up. This is what we all knew about Islam. Now, it might not be right, and there are people that do that, and they don't understand Islam. But I knew at this point that 9/11 was a lie. I knew that I did not believe the story. I didn't believe that these, hillbilly Muslims from a cave in Afghanistan hijacked these planes and pulled off this amazing event, that there was some other kind of a collusion going on. I don't know the whole details of it, but I think that architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, I look at this, right? I look at the places that are doing the science and the logic of the event, and so let's study it and answer the questions that way.
It could be an
but anyway,
job,
get back to the story. On it was a Monday.
So you were praying outside the house, right? And you were saying that
praying outside the house. I asked Adonai to help, and I looked up. It was like midnight, but I lived on a street with a lot of street lights. It was very well lit, and about 200 yards down, 200 meters down, I saw this little fuzzy thing, and so I thought I had like dust in my eyes. I rubbed my eyes and shook my head, right, to clear my vision, and I looked again, and this thing, this blur, was actually moving at me, and I thought, oh my God, I'm having a flashback, right? Like those college days are coming back to me, and so I shook my head again, and I rubbed my eyes even more, and I opened and I looked, and now this thing was like maybe 50 yards from me.
So it's getting closer.
It was coming very close, and at this time I could see it. A 10-foot square, like a piece of glass that you could see through, but it was like a funhouse mirror. And when you look through this, everything was wavy, right? It was all wavy. On the outside of it, though, everything looked normal. And I was kind of dumbstruck, right? I'm staring at this. It was like a flying piece of glass. I don't know how else to describe it. To me, that's what it looked like. And it got about 25 feet away from me. And then I realized, in the vernacular that I had at the time, I said, oh no, that's a demon. And, that technically would be a correct word. I saw, it was like, it was like Ghostbusters. It was really weird. It like hit me, just like Slimer hits the guy in Ghostbusters, except there's no slime. And it like hit me. Actually, I think it went into my house, right? Yeah, but it hit me, and it took all my energy. I believe these things are some sort of a negative energy form, because it sucked all of my energy. It was like I was drunk, and I had no energy. I couldn't even think about what happened. I just stumbled to my bed, and I crashed out, fell asleep, and I slept for about 12 hours. And I woke up, and I felt hungover, like, oh man, what happened? What happened? And then it was like, oh yeah, you saw that demon thing. Well, obviously this Adonai guy, he probably isn't God, because that is not the kind of a sign that I would expect that God would give. So, even though back in university the rabbi told me I couldn't be a Jew, maybe the Jews are right. Maybe the Old Testament, maybe this thing they call Jehovah is God. And so I remember praying. I stood up in my room and I prayed to Jehovah, and asking Jehovah if he was God to give me a sign. It took about maybe like 30 seconds after that, and my house phone. And I have a cell phone and a house phone. I don't answer the house phone. That's for the kids. And
yeah.
But I had a weird thought. What if God's calling? You prayed for a sign and the phone's ringing. And I laugh, because what a funny thought that is. But you better go answer it. So I had a little caller ID box, and I went to the phone. There was a guy's name, and he was I could see the city. It was like maybe 50 miles away. Nobody I knew. And I picked up the phone and I said, hello. And he said, I got a message last night that somebody at this number was in trouble. And I said, dude, that's a weird thing to say. Who are you? And he said, I'm so-and-so, and it matched the name on the box, and I'm a priest. And I went, oh my God, you're a priest. I just prayed to Jehovah, and you called. This must be a sign. I'm lost, I'm confused, I'm terrified, I see things people are not supposed to see. I think I'm suicidal because this is just too much for me to handle. I need answers about who is God. And he said, where are you? Which is weird because he called me, you should know where I am. But I said, I'm in Rochester. And he said, well, I was there last night. But now I'm, at this other city, which I can't remember the name, but it was 50 miles away. And then I said, yeah, I know where it's at. I can be there in a half hour. Just give me 10 minutes, answer 5 questions about God for me. That's all I need. I need to understand who is God. And he wouldn't let me come. He said, I can't right now. We're busy. I said, okay, how about tomorrow? Nah, he was busy. It was like 10 days later. He said, okay, we made an appointment. And I hung up the phone happy, thinking, okay, in 10 days, I got to find out who God is. So I'm quite happy. And then I said, whoa, let's wait a second here. This is a really odd conversation. Let's think about it. What did you tell this guy? You told this guy that you think you're suicidal. And if he's a holy man, of a priest, or I don't care if you're a priest, an imam, a Buddhist monk, or whatever you are, if you're a holy man and somebody tells you they think you're suicidal, I think it's your duty to help that person at that moment so they don't kill themselves. And he was not willing to do that. And I thought, well, that's weird. What did he say? He said, I was in your city last night. I said, oh, yeah, okay. What happened last night? And it's like, oh, yeah, you saw that demon. So somehow this guy and that demon, I realized we're connected. And when that demon went into my house, in a weird way, I guess it got my phone number. I don't really know. I don't understand that kind of stuff. But this guy called after I prayed to call him. And I thought, well, that's not God, right? That can't be the creator. Because God would not terrify you like that.
That's right.
And I thought, well, the only thing left that I thought could possibly be God was Allah. But that programming, the propaganda from the news, and, from your family and everything, even though I knew that the Muslims were not the people that were guilty of 9/11, I was still afraid to pray to Allah. Because, like my uncle who was a preacher told me that Allah is the moon god, right? And I thought, well, I might have just prayed to Satan in disguise a couple of times. I don't want to do it again. Maybe 3 times a charm and boom, you go to hell. So I was afraid to pray. And I didn't pray. And I became depressed. It's very strange. I started becoming depressed almost, within hours, a very severe depression, right? That was like Tuesday at noon. By Tuesday night, I was so depressed, I just couldn't leave my room. Wednesday, I couldn't get out of my bed. I just felt so depressed, laid in bed all day. By the end of Wednesday, I was crying. And I remember wondering, why are you crying, right? And if this is what people go through that are severely depressed, this is actually one of the most horrible feelings. I really, my heart goes out to them. On Thursday, I couldn't stop crying. I basically laid in bed and cried all day Thursday.
SubhanAllah, you were lost, yeah.
Friday,
I know the
I
feeling.
got up Friday, and my bed was soaked. My first thought was that I wet the bed, and then I realized that these are tears, that I had spent all night crying, and everything was soaked from tears when I got up. And it was at that moment that, we have these, what I call disturbing thoughts, right? In Islam we call them whispers, and, the shaitan's whispering to you and things like this. But, and a term that's easily understood by everybody is, we all have disturbing thoughts that it's like, wow, that was, why did I think that? That was such a really weird, horrible thing to think. And, it's not necessarily us, right? These are kind of like outside influences that affect us. And I had this thought, and this thought said, you can't live like this. Life is not worth living if you have to go like this. There's only one thing you can do, that's kill yourself. And I thought myself, I did think, that's right? I mean, if I have to live through every day where I'm crying and I can't even get out of my bed, what is the point of being alive? And so I started going through the logistics of how do you kill yourself, right? I mean, I had known people when I was growing up whose parents had committed suicide. Like this one guy, unfortunately, his mother hung herself in the garage. Kids came home from school and found her, and it was like severely traumatic. I would not want to do that to my kids. So I came up with a plan, and the plan was to take a lot of drugs out in the middle of the forest, and this is the best way to kill yourself. And I was like actually happy because I had solved this problem of depression. And then I had another thought, like, maybe it was like the little angel was whispering to me or something, I don't know. But the other thought was, wait a second, you saw the moon. You saw this miracle. You cannot deny it. You know that God is real. So if you kill yourself, you're going to go to hell. And there I was, stuck again at that same equation from a week earlier, where the only thing I knew was I didn't want to go to hell. So I thought, really, if Allah is Satan and you kill yourself, you're going to go to hell and meet him. And if you pray to him and he turns out to be Satan, you're going to go to hell and meet him. What do you got to lose? You might as well pray. Maybe there's some more tricks being played that you're not aware of. And so I remember it was a Friday. It was 10 a.m. And I stood up in my room and I put my hands together and I said, Allah, I'm lost. I'm confused. I'm suicidal. I see things that people are not supposed to see, and this is too much for me. And if you're God, I don't even know why I have to ask you this or tell you this, because you should already know. But if you are God, I'm begging you to help me. Give me something. And actually, at that exact moment, it felt like my heart was a balloon, and that Allah went, and my heart like literally expanded in my chest. Like this weird substance had been injected or blown into my heart, and this substance was called love. Now, this love was like practically solid, right? I mean, you love your mother, or you love your children, you love your spouse, and that's a love you can't really touch with your fingers. But this was something you could touch. And I felt it. I mean, I literally felt my heart expand with it. And it was like a star being born. It's kind of like, I think of it like, and it leaked in a weird way. I don't know how to explain it except to say it leaked out of my heart. And I felt this love in waves, like perfect sine waves traveling from my heart out to my hands, from my heart down to my feet, from my heart up to my head. And my body was like encompassed in these waves of love, except for my heart. It was still like this bright star. And I remember laughing because I said, it's not your head, it's your heart, right? Part of the story we skipped over was meditation practices. And, somebody I knew had told me that our pineal gland is like our cell phone to God. And I believed it. And I realized that that's not true. Now, the pineal gland is kind of a cell phone to like the universe, so to speak. But it's not your connection to God. Our connection to God is directly from our heart. And so I knew that our heart was our connection to Allah. I knew that Allah loved me because I felt it, right? And I believe He loves all of us this much. We might reject Him, but anytime that we seek Him out, that love is waiting for us. And I knew that Islam was the right religion because I use the word Allah when I pray. And I knew that, at least in my heart, I felt like, okay, I'm a Muslim. Although I really had no idea what it meant. I didn't know actually even what the religion of Islam was.
You just felt that you surrendered to the true God.
I wanted to know the truth, and I didn't care what the truth was. I just wanted to know the truth.
Right.
And I was not expecting it to be Islam, to be honest with you. When this whole journey started, I honestly did not believe Islam was the truth. But because the truth was more important to me than anything else, I was willing to accept whatever it was. And it was obviously Islam.
Subhanallah.
Now, I didn't know what Islam was. There was a masjid in town, and most of the people there were Somalis, and at that time, you know, they were very tribal. And so I was actually kind of afraid to go there. You know, maybe that was like whispers or something, you know, kind of, you know, at this point in your life, when people are really getting close to converting, those whispers take a very active role.
Now,
So I was afraid to
let
go.
me ask you again, which state was that in?
Minnesota.
Minnesota, okay. Yeah, sorry. There is a lot of Muslims in Minnesota. Yeah, there is a large community.
There was a lot of Somali Muslims in Minnesota. And,
Yeah, so so did you go to the masjid that day, or no, you didn't go?
No, I didn't go to the masjid at all. I was afraid to go there. But there was a Pakistani restaurant that I liked, right? And I know they were Muslim, but they made a great gyro. So
I know, right?
what I did is I went to the restaurant, and you know, there's like a guy who seats you at your table, and I went up to the host or the maitre d', whatever you call the guy, and I said, "Hey, I'm a Muslim, but I have no idea what Islam is.
Subhanallah.
I need you to tell me what is Islam." And he said, "Oh no, don't ask me. I'm not a good Muslim." And he could see by the look on my face how, you know, I was very dejected and almost depressed that he couldn't answer my question. He said, "Oh, but wait, you know, I have a brother. He works in the library at the mosque, and we'll get him in touch with you, and he can answer all your questions."
Subhanallah.
And it took a few days for us to get in touch because like I said, those whispers take a very active role at this time. And, you know, they were making us miss contacts and weird stuff. Anyways, after a few days, we finally did connect. He explained to me what Islam was, you know, the 5 pillars, the 6 particles. And I was like, "Dude, whatever you're telling me, I believe it. I know that Allah is God, and whatever is part of His religion, I'm cool with. I'm good. Just like, what do we got to do, right? I mean, you're like, I signed something in blood. How do I become a Muslim?" And he said, "Well, we're not quite done. You know, there's one thing we really have to go over that we haven't touched on yet, and that's the Quran." And I said, "Okay, what about it?" He said, "The Quran is the actual words of God given to the angel Gabriel and relayed to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam." And I said, "No way. How do I know that?" Right? I mean, I knew in the Bible there's some stuff about God, the real God, you know, Allah, God Almighty, is in there. But there's some stuff that's not about God that they say is about God. I can see that there's almost like 2 entities that are being called God. How do I know that didn't happen to the Quran? And he said, "Well, it's been passed down, word of mouth, since the time it was revealed." And I said, "So what? The Torah has been passed down word of mouth since it was revealed, but yet I still don't think it's original. How do I know the Quran is original?" And
Good
he
question.
said a
By
lot
the
of
way,
things.
this is a misconception. A lot of new non-Muslims actually ask these questions. So, what was the answer for that? Please, I'm sorry. Yeah,
That's okay.
that's a good question. I love that. Okay.
Well, you see, the things that Muslims, especially born Muslims, believe about the Quran as why it's the proof that it's from God, does not answer the questions of a convert, right?
Okay.
This is stuff you were taught from a child that you believe, and, you know, I mean, it's the truth, but you accept it without question. And I don't accept anything without question. I question everything. And
That's good. Yeah.
so
That's the right
I told him this isn't working for me. If I can't I want to be a Muslim. I have a hard time with the idea of the Quran being from God's actual words. So give me some proof, right? I mean, you would not believe the week that I had. It's crazy. I know without a doubt, it's not that I believe. I actually know without a doubt in my mind that Allah is God. But I have a doubt about this Quran. So what can we do about that? And he said, I got a book at the library. Let's meet again tomorrow. The book that he brought was called, I think it's A Brief Understanding of Islam. Right? It's got like on the cover, it's got like the world, right? The blue marble kind of the earth. And like a little Quran, like a satellite flying around it. I remember that from the cover. And this book really talks about the scientific signs that you find in the Quran.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
For me, the thing that did it was the development stages of the human embryo. Right? Because everything that I was reading in there, I was basing it on, was it possible for a man 1,400 years ago to know this? Because if it was possible for him to know this, then how can I say that that's a miracle? But for myself, I was satisfied that a man 1,400 years ago could not know the 5 development stages described in the Quran of the human embryo so accurately, and right, without an MRI machine. So it's like, okay, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam obviously did not know this unless God told him. So I accept it, right? And today, I find that for myself personally, there's an even better proof, which is that and this kind of hits home for you. The Dead Sea is the lowest land on earth.
That's correct.
Right?
Yeah. Yes.
Quran talks about this battle in 7 or 9 years between the Romans and the Persians at the lowest land on earth.
Wow.
And it turned out that happened to be the Dead Sea where that battle took place.
That's true.
And until we had satellites, until we had GPS that could map the whole world, it would be impossible for anybody to know that that's the lowest point on earth. Maybe in South America there was a point that was lower, right? So until the modern era of GPS, that could not be proven. But since it can now, I find that that's even a bit better of a scientific proof. I don't want to say these are scientific evidences. These are the scientific signs, because the Quran is a book of signs. So he said, okay, and I don't even remember what day it was. I think that was like the following Wednesday. And he said, I said, okay, I accept. Let's take my shahada right now. Wow. And he said, no, let's wait till Friday, because everybody will come, right? I mean, at this masjid, there were so many people, they had to have 3 or 4 Jummahs. Right? Just like many masjids in America, it requires more than 1 Jummah.
We call them mega masjids.
Huh?
We call them mega masjids.
Well, where I'm at in California, even the small masjids are this way. Right? It takes 4. You got one that starts at 12. Right, you got one that starts at 1, one that starts at 2, and the final starts at 3. Yeah. Simply because there's so many Muslims that will make it for Friday, although they don't make it during the week because of their work schedules and traveling takes a long time. I mean, it's not like I'm in Kuwait right now where there's a mosque just down, every 100 yards there's a mosque. It's not that way in America. Right. So you might have to drive an hour. I know I have a Muslim friend of mine. She has to go 100 miles to get to the closest masjid. She lives in California.
Well, I live here in Virginia. We have a musalla over here that only opens on Friday, but to go to the bigger masjid, I have to drive about 35 minutes to get there. So, there are some places here, as you say, that they are like, you feel that you are remote. like in a remote area, there's no masajid, no Muslims, nothing. So I totally understand, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, America is a very large place.
Right.
You know, the distances are very large.
It's half a continent.
And, well, see, he wanted me to wait till Friday, and I was like, no, wait. What if a bus hits me now? I told him, I go, you are wrong. And this is 100% correct. I was 100% correct.
That's right.
The second somebody wants to take a shahada, you give them shahada, because you never know what's going to happen in the next minute. Right?
Right.
I said, what if I get hit by a bus when I go home from here? Right? And then you didn't give me my shahada, and then I go to hell? That's not right. And he said, no, don't worry, it's not going to happen. Let's go on Friday. And he talked me into it. I was like, okay, Friday. But, like I told you, those disturbing thoughts, they very much become very active. And I thought like I was being watched, and I had all these very paranoid and crazy inputs coming in between that day and Friday. And on Friday, I was actually afraid to go to the masjid because I thought, like, I got this weird thing that, you know, somebody would blow it up if I went to the masjid. So I didn't want innocent people to die. I didn't go to the masjid. I remember I went to this alley, and like I put my hands up, and I said, okay, you know, kill me. I win. You kill me, I win. It's okay. But don't hurt anybody else. And you know what happened? Do you know what happened?
What happened?
Nothing. Because it's crazy thoughts. That's what these demons, these jinn, they put these crazy thoughts in your head. Nothing happened. Of course, it's an insane thing to do.
Right. Shaitan puts these ideas in us to hold us back,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Yeah.
Right. It's either working to try and keep you from the right path. That's
Right.
all that is.
Right.
And if you're experiencing them, now it's, you know, I can laugh about it today, but when you're experiencing them, it's very serious, very scary, and very troubling. And it's very important that these people that are experiencing these or suffering from this accept Islam and start learning the Quran, start listening to the Quran, because these, you know, and start doing this ignorant, because these are the things that clean these disturbing thoughts off of us.
Subhanallah.
But anyways, he contacted me the next day, and he was like, okay, I get it. I tell you what, meet me at the park. So we met at the park right then. I took my shahada with him on a park bench.
Subhanallah. Allahu
And
Akbar.
that's the crazy story of how I became Muslim.
Alhamdulillah, mashallah. So how is your life as a new Muslim? How did you learn? Because I want also to encourage the reverts. Now I am actually this video is live also in the groups of the reverts that they are watching you right now, watching your story. So many of them, they see it as it is an overwhelming thing to learn the prayers and learn all the stuff right away. So how did you learn, and how did you gradually become to what you are right now? So
It is overwhelming. You
Right.
see, just because I accepted Islam on that day and I became a Muslim, it did not stop those disturbing thoughts, right? We spend all our life inviting these disturbing thoughts, right? We don't say Bismillah before we eat. We don't say the dua before we go and use the toilet. All these duas, all these zikrs that the Prophet ﷺ taught us was to work as like a protection against these things. And so we spend our life accumulating, and they don't just go away. This first week or first 2 weeks is actually the most important part of a Muslim's life in his religion, because this is when Shaitan is working the hardest to try to pull him back. I had a Quran, an English translation Quran, that I got from an organization in Chicago called Foundation. And so I became Muslim. I had this Quran for a year already sitting on the shelf. You know, I got the Quran, actually I got that Quran a year before I accepted Islam. I saw an advertisement on TV that Foundation had put on. It said, if you want a free Quran, just call us and leave your address, and we'll mail you one for free, no shipping, nothing. And I thought, okay, the price is right. You know, I'll check that Quran why people become terrorists, because this makes no sense to me. These people say they worship God. They say they're, related to Abraham, right? That they're part of the Abrahamic religion. So why are they becoming terrorists? I don't get it. I'll take that. So I ordered that Quran. And when it arrived, I saw Jesus. And I saw Moses. And I saw all of these prophets that I recognized from the Bible.
Was it like a dream? I'm sorry. Was that a dream, or were you reading?
No, I was reading the Quran.
Okay.
In English.
Okay.
And in the Quran, you will find Jesus.
That's right. Yes.
And you will find Moses. And you will find Eunice or Jonah. And you will find Ayub or Job. Right? You will find all of these prophets from the Bible, because these are all prophets of Allah. You will also find their stories in the Quran. Now, some stories are similar to the ones from the Bible, and some are stories that the Bible doesn't even have, so it's new information. But when I read it, I came to the name Jesus, and I thought, oh no, these Muslims are as mixed up as the Christians. And so I put the Quran on the shelf, and that was a year before I accepted Islam. But Allah being the best of planners, He knew one day I would be ready for it. So He had it sitting on the shelf waiting for me. After I became Muslim, I didn't know how to pray. And I really feel bad for the guys like Ray, my mentee, the guy from Kenya who I'm helping out. The masjids are closed where he's at. He can't go to the masjid. So it's very difficult for these guys accepting Islam right now. I knew that I didn't know how to pray, so I was going to stand behind that imam and let him pray, and I would at least be attached to that prayer, and I would give my prayer credit. And I didn't have to know how to pray right away. Right? When you accept Islam, it's really important that you make all your 5 prayers in the masjid, so that you are getting your prayer credit while you are learning on how to actually perform the prayers for yourself, if at all possible.
Right. So I have at least like probably 5 or 6 mentors that they are watching us right now, and this is going to be on YouTube. I want the mentors to hear this, is because you were you reverted to Islam, and how hard it was for you. Like nobody probably taught you, or nobody, I don't know. I mean, myself, nobody taught me. It was really hard for me to learn myself. And having a mentor is such a blessing for someone to, basically like you're adopting a baby and you're raising them. You see what I'm saying? So what you're doing is a great thing, and you're getting a great reward. And for my mentors too, may Allah bless them all for all the work that they're doing. So yeah, but there is a question before we go further. I want to go back to that first 2 weeks of your Islam, because I have at least 3 girls that they tell me the same thing, and I actually experienced that when I became Muslim. As you said, I have all these negative ideas, and sometimes like I have nightmares. It's like, what I have done, did I do something wrong? Did I was it like a bad decision? And one time I have this dream of a nightmare. I'm gonna share it with you real quick. That I was standing on a battlefield, and I saw all my family members dead on the ground, and they're all killed, and I have a knife in my hand as I'm the one who killed them. And then when I went to a psychiatric and I told her about what happened, she said, this is an internal image. It's not from God or anything like that. It's actually from you, that you're feeling guilty that you became Muslim and you announced your Islam, and everybody's mad at you, and you don't feel accepted by the society, and probably rejected and shunned. And that's why other people that's why it projects on you those negative thoughts and feelings. So what do you think about that? What is your what you said, that was great, by the way, because it answered a lot of questions, but I wanted to like touch base more on that idea, inshallah.
Well, I mean, like when we have a negative dream like that, especially in a person who's just became Muslim or about to become Muslim, the shaitans, they can influence our dreams, and they'll whisper while we're sleeping, and that's how they influence our dreams. And they'll give you these negative, scary dreams because, shaitan is the king of doubt. They want to put doubts in your mind about God, about Allah, Islam and about your choice. Be steadfast. Now, I'll tell you a little bit. My first week, right? I mean, I was going to the masjid every day, but I thought, well, I got this Quran sitting on the shelf. I better read it because I want to know, what does God want to say to us, right? What does God want to say to me? Right? When we want to talk to God,
okay.
pray.
Brother,
we want God to talk to us, we read the Quran.
Right. I want to interrupt you for just 1 second because I also hear the voice that sometimes it comes and go. You said that you have a microphone. Would you be able to use the microphone, inshallah?
Yeah. Just hang on a second, I'll grab it.
Okay, because the voice keeps going back and forth. Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to use this microphone because I have to use a splitter with it that is also for headphones. And it's the headphones that are turning off my speaker. So I've got to unplug it. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what it is. Right. I'm going to have to use an earphone with this microphone to make it work like that.
Oh, okay. So
anyway,
yeah, and now is
let me say something that directly addresses what you're talking about.
Right.
I had this Quran, and I was reading it, and I read like 3 pages, and then I realized I couldn't remember anything at all. It was very weird. So I thought, okay, let's go back and read a paragraph, right? You know, I don't know if that's 3 or 4 verses. Let's read a paragraph. And I read a paragraph. And I got to the end of the paragraph, and then I stopped and I asked myself, okay, what did it say? And I could not remember. And so I tried one ayat. And at the end of the ayat, I could not remember. And I said, okay, let's do this one word at a time. And so I read one word. And then I read, and then I looked up, and okay, I could remember it. And I read 2 words, and I looked up and repeated them. And when I got the 5 words, I couldn't remember those 5 words anymore. And at this point, I didn't know what was going on, and I kind of just shined it on for a few days, forgot about it, you know. And then one day, like in the morning, you know, you go into the bathroom and you take the newspaper with you to read in the morning. And I thought, well, you know what? I need to read this book. So I'll take this book with me into the toilet area. And all of a sudden, I could remember. I was reading this Quran in the toilet area, and I could remember what I was reading. I got very excited. I ran to my room because I wanted to write down these questions that I had, right? That this had brought up, these questions. And when I got into my bedroom, I couldn't remember anything about what I read.
SubhanAllah.
So I grabbed a pen and a paper, and I went back and, you know, I closed the lid and I sat on the toilet and I read for hours. And I wrote all these questions down that I wanted to take to the masjid and ask the people to answer for me.
Now, at that time, you didn't know that it was haram to read it in the.
No, yeah, I had no idea, right? It's like my first week. I don't know.
Because I don't want anyone to suspect. They're like, how could he do that? He did not know. Just to let you know, okay? Yeah.
So, at that point, I realized this is crazy. How can I not remember when I'm in my room and I can remember in the toilet area? That makes 0 sense. And the Quran that I had from Furqan Foundation had a phone number. And so I called them, you know, and somebody answered. And I said, hey, this is what's going on. And I don't understand. Can you explain to me how come I can remember everything I'm reading in the toilet, but I cannot remember it when I read it in my bedroom? And the guy or the lady, I don't remember, she said, I don't have the expertise to help you. But we got a guy, Sheikh Omar, and here's his phone number. You give him a call, and he'll help you. And so I called Sheikh Omar. It took a few days for us to actually connect, you know, because that weird interference was happening. And Sheikh Omar told me, he said, look, when you spend your life not protecting yourself, not doing the zikrs, not making the du'as, you will have all of these negative things attached to you, all of these jinn, and that's what's affecting you right now. He said, the reason that this is happening is because You're not supposed to read the Quran in the toilet, so they leave you alone in the toilet because you're doing something wrong. But when you try to do something right, then they bother you. And so he said, just go down to the masjid and recite Allah Akbar for 2 hours every day for a week, and these things will leave you alone. I found it impossible to do that. I could not, for whatever reason, I'd go to the masjid for prayer, but I couldn't bring myself to stay and do these zikrs for some reason. So a week later, I called him back and I said, I'm having a really hard time doing this thing, this simple thing. And he said, okay, instead, what I want you to do is go to the masjid and recite La ilaha illallah. And I said, you know, I hear you, but I can't even repeat that because my memory becomes so bad when I try to say that, I can't even say that. And so I wrote it down. I went to the masjid. I would read it and turn it over and try to say it. And if I couldn't say it, I'd flip it over and read it. So I would probably read it like 5 times, turn it over, and then try to say it. Maybe I could say it once or twice and I would forget. And I would flip it over and read it, and then turn it upside down, close my eyes, and try to recite it. And after doing this for, I don't know, a while, I don't know how long, not very long though, when my eyes were closed and I was reciting, I started seeing these things, these like red and blue little colors. And it was like these little things were leaving. And like I counted 62 or 3 of these little colors, little circle kind of colors, you know, when my eyes were closed. And I realized that these things that I were looking at were that these disturbing thoughts, these little jinn that I had accumulated. And after that, then I was able to read the Quran in my room, and things became a lot easier. That doesn't mean shaitan leaves you alone.
That's right.
I still had a hard time learning the Fatiha. And alhamdulillah, there was a brother from UAE, Omar, very good man. He was getting tired of me not learning. Right? I mean, he was actually kind of angry with me, and that's fine because that's what I needed. And he grabbed me and he sat me down one day and he said, "You and I are going to learn the Fatiha right now." And it probably took 3-4 hours working it one line at a time. But by the time I left the masjid that day, I had memorized the Fatiha. Alhamdulillah. And so this is a problem. If you don't have that guy like Omar who can grab you and sit you down and force you to do it, Shaitan's going to keep working on you and make it harder and harder for you. Right. And I mean, they do affect your desires, right? It makes your desire to want to do it very minimal, and your desire to want to do anything else very strong. And we have to find a way to overcome that. You know, I mean, yeah. What I recommend to a lot of people is listen to the Quran. I understand you can't recite it, just listen to it. Listen to Fatiha, listen to Ikhlas, Falak, and Nas, listen to all of Baqarah, right? And sit there and just really absorb it deep, and that will help control these impulses to not do what you know you should be doing.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakumullah khair. So you were telling me yesterday about a program that you're doing. Like, how did you come up with this idea, and like your progress on teaching and learning and all these things? So tell us a little bit about this.
I'm working on an idea, on a project right now with either the Compass Project as one name, or Forgiveness is Healing. It's really a project about forgiveness, healing, and justice. I like maybe calling it the Compass Project because a compass gives us our direction, right? And our direction is supposed to be down the straight path so that we can be successful on Judgment Day. So I kind of like that idea, that name. I'm still playing with that. But I've been doing other things. I've been doing, like in the United States, I work with Furqan Foundation for distributing Qurans. I think that it's like 1.7 million Qurans that Furqan has distributed in the United States at this point. With them, I also got involved with Dawah in the Philippines. And there was an organization in the Philippines, Furqan, like a branch or sister organization. And the guy who was running it had an argument with some of the guys that were the da'is, with like these two da'is that I liked a lot. I liked these guys a lot. I saw amazing dawah with them. Like, we went and spoke to 60 people and 40 of them accepted Islam because the one gentleman he learned Christianity from the inside. He was the da'i for the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
What's his name?
And,
I probably know him.
Narciso.
I know Brother Isa Wood. I think he's with the Furqan, if I'm not mistaken.
He is. Isa Wood is with these in the United States.
I actually met him in Alabama. Yeah, mashallah.
Yeah. He's on the East Coast in the United States. It's a wonderful job. Well, I'm talking about the Philippines.
Okay, yeah.
And Narciso is in the Philippines. And Narciso, he knows everything there is to know about debating, because for the Seventh-day Adventists, he was the guy that they sent to the debates on the side of Christianity.
Subhanallah.
And he's actually kind of like famous amongst the Christians because back in the 90s, he won a debate so much, the imam actually converted to Christianity. And so, that's like a very rare thing. Even if, a debate is just about who knows better words at a given time. So maybe the guy can beat you with words. That doesn't change who God is. That doesn't change Judgment Day. I mean, maybe you can talk better than me and you sound better than me and you win a debate, you score more points. But I'm not about to give up Judgment Day. I'm not about to give up paradise just because you beat me in a debate. But apparently, he convinced this imam to become a Christian. And so Narciso became very famous. Over time, he became very disillusioned with a lot of the stuff the church was saying that wasn't actually in the Bible. And he met a guy called Abdul-Bari. And Abdul-Bari was the other da'i I'm talking about. And Abdul-Bari spoke to him and he became Muslim. And I watched these guys talk to people. And if they talked to 3 people, 2 of them accepted Islam. So I didn't want that power of dawah to go away. And they invited me to Philippines. They said, we need to do something. We need your help. So I went there and we had it was a little coffee table with 6 of us back in 2015. And we decided we needed to do something different, right? Because I knew that what I really needed to do was get a bunch of people in front of them, because the statistics were they were very good at what they do. So the traditional dawah of like a book table or the guy who stands in the corner with the microphone and the speaker, that doesn't get the numbers of people to listen that I knew we needed to do.
Right.
So we had to come up with a different method of dawah. There wasn't really like that direct hit you on the head dawah, right? So we decided we needed to address something that was a problem in Philippines. And one of the problems they had were the Muslims. I mean, historically, the Muslims were the drug dealers, the kidnappers. They had their own brand of ISIS going on there. The Christians were terrified, and rightly so. So I said, we decided that what we need to do is find a way to spread peace amongst the people. That we wanted to show these, ideally Christians, because it's a very Christian nation, but anybody, regardless of their religion, we wanted them to understand that whatever these guys over here are doing is not Islam, right? They might be Muslim, I don't know, I'm not a judge, that's for Judgment Day,
Right.
but what they were doing was not Islam. Even if they said it was, they were wrong.
Right.
So we wanted them to understand what real Islam was about and how real Muslims need to behave.
Right.
And that's in a peaceful, neighborly way where the golden rule is important. You treat people the way you want to be treated. The same way the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he treated the lady next door who she hated Islam. She threw garbage in front of his door every day. And He spoke to her with kind words every day. Every time he saw her, he was polite. One day, there was no garbage in front of his door. And instead of being happy that there was no garbage, he became worried because there must be something wrong with the lady. She must be sick. That's why she didn't come out and throw garbage, right? This is really the true Islam, right? The true belief of how we should be friendly to everybody. That, you know, even if they don't like us, it's okay. Allah tells us in the Quran that you treat bad deeds with good deeds, right? If somebody's evil, bad to you, protect yourself. Justice is involved, but don't be wrong. Don't wrong them just because they wrong you, right? Be just. Provide justice for them. Be just to them, and so that's what we wanted to show in the Philippines. It became very popular. We would approach churches with this message: unity of the peacemakers, right? If you want peace, we need to unify, right? It doesn't matter what your religion is. What it's about is making society better for everybody. And we had some, alhamdulillah, we had some sponsors. There's a lady in Emirates who was mailing giant boxes of diapers and formula, and they would put together money and sponsor wells and stuff like this. And so the organization would take them to the maternity hospital. And it wasn't just Muslims, it was anybody at the maternity hospital. They would get some diapers and some formula because they're really poor and they need it, right? It's about helping people because they're people, not about because of what they believe, but because they're humans. And as Muslims, we need to be the guide for the humans, right? This is how you should behave. And the organization, it grew from 6 people in 2015 to, like, I don't know, when we quit counting, maybe in 2018, it was over 26,000 people. And for the first 2 years, I did the statistics. I counted, I saw over 3,000 people accept Islam. There was a bunch that accepted Islam when I wasn't there because I didn't live in the Philippines. I just visited. And
MashaAllah. Well,
I realized that this is the way that I want to go forward. Is I want to make an organization where it's about doing right. It's about helping people. It's about providing. And I already had the idea about forgiveness is healing. This has always been my mantra since I became Muslim. But especially this year, right? We can look at what's going on right now with all the protests and the riots and the way that, in these riots and these protests, the police are really the bad actors, right? Now the protests, we don't have those foreign influences that are like burning buildings and stuff like that so much. But it's the police that are really acting horrible to the people that have a perfect right to protest according to the United States Constitution.
Right.
And the reason that all of this is going on is because they need healing, right? These people, they don't even know it. They're hurting. They're angry. They've been oppressed. Especially the African Americans, but really all the people have been oppressed unless they're the oppressors. And they're in desperate need of healing. And so that's why I can see that this is more important than ever. I spent my lockup time, we're still in lockup here, studying the methodologies of forgiveness, because one of the things we can do to help people is help them forgive, because it is actually scientifically proven to be healing. When we are hurt, we become angry, and we hold these resentments, we actually raise our cortisol levels and all these stress hormones. And these stress hormones are, you can think of them like tiny little knives floating around in our body, stabbing all of our internal organs and shortening our life and creating diseases and things like this, right? If you've ever been angry at somebody, you can understand that this isn't healthy, right? You feel bad, right? Of course you're angry, but you also physically feel bad. And it's been proven that when you forgive somebody, not just with your brain, right? Intellectual forgiveness, we know we need to forgive, but I told myself, okay, I'm going to forgive this person, but then when I'm around that person, I'm doing all this passive aggressive stuff, right? I'm still kind of secretly angry at him, that means I have not actually cleaned my heart. I have not emotionally forgiven him. And so I've been studying the mechanics, the methodology of emotional forgiveness. And there's an actual methodology, just like there's the grieving process. There's a forgiving process with steps. And so I think that, we can open up with forgiveness and help people heal, right? Because there's going to be a lot of emotional damage, a lot of trauma, whether, we carried it since we were kids, or, we're being traumatized right now by our own government. There's a lot of trauma going on right now. And this is going to need to be healed. And not only that, but there's a lot of physical stuff, like COVID, right? I mean, there's all kinds of diseases and stuff that we need to heal from. And while I don't suggest that forgiveness replaces medicine, definitely follow your doctor's orders. It's very helpful to remove that cortisol that is affecting health.
Right.
And then, of course, we take that farther and we show the true forgiveness. Actually, the most important aspect of forgiveness is divine forgiveness, right? Because as a believer, you and I know Judgment Day is very real. And the most important thing that happens for us as far as forgiveness is concerned is that we receive the mercy and forgiveness of our Creator on Judgment Day.
That's correct.
And so this will be a method of da'wah to start people down this path of forgiveness. And then we can introduce the concepts through Tawheed of divine forgiveness and then show them that this type of forgiveness is really successful, and this is also part of Islam. And I mean, it's still progress, right? It's still a work in progress at this point. I have a website that, unfortunately, I'm old school, right? I'm not a programmer. I don't, my kids, they're not Muslim, or maybe I can get them to help. But forgiveness-heal.org, right? You can go there. That's the website. And it's a work in progress. Basically, it's a placeholder at this point.
Yeah.
I doodle with it each day, and if there's people out there that find forgiveness to be something important, maybe they want to volunteer to help. That would be wonderful.
I'll put the address of that website, inshallah, and your email at the bottom of the video. So on YouTube and also on this, inshallah, I can put it in the text. So people can actually visit your website and also contact you through your email, inshallah. But before I go, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran in chapter 4, I believe, says, but pardon them and overlook their misdeeds. Indeed, Allah loves the doers of good. And so I always say that you forgive not because the one who wronged you deserve it. You forgive not because the one who wronged you is asking you for it. You forgive not because the one who wronged you feels bad about it or have remorses. Actually, you forgive to reconcile with yourself. You forgive to stop worrying and eliminate your depression. You forgive to live happier and carefree. And most importantly, you forgive to be forgiven by Allah and live happily in this life and hereafter. So, subhanallah. So, inshallah, before we go, I only have 5 minutes and then I have to go actually to the other masjid. I have 5 minutes, inshallah. If you can tell me if you have any message to the non-Muslims or to the Muslims, or if you have any kind of comment or message, inshallah, before we conclude. Jazakallah khair. Yeah.
For the non-Muslims, what I would hope is that they take an honest look, right? What are you going to do on Judgment Day, right? You need to take an honest look at what is God, who is God, and not be afraid of what you find out, right? You might be afraid, but don't let that stop you from the truth. And the first step on that journey is to simply ask God Almighty to show you the truth, right? And I would ask that you ask Allah to show you the truth. Ask Allah if He is God. and ask him for signs. Now, there might not be the big signs that I got because, I mean, while I was having these big signs, that's because at the same time, Satan was really, really strong in my life too, right? And so I needed those big signs because I was having big complications. But ask God to help, ask God to direct you. And it will happen. You will see things. All too often we want to say that's not real, that's a coincidence, that's not God. But remember, if you ask God, be willing to accept the signs that you see, the pathway that comes in front of you. And be sincere when you ask, right? I mean, if you're not sincere, nobody does, like if you ask me for a favor and you don't really mean it, why would I do it, right? If you don't really, if you're not sincere with God to show you the right path, maybe you're not high on the. Be sincere and God will be sincere with you. You take one step towards God and God comes running for you. God wants all of us to worship him. Yeah. God only wants the best for us. And the best for us is to be in paradise, right? I mean, if you look at it, right, I mean, life is only that long, right? Say there's a rope, and that much of the rope is life. And then the afterlife runs continuous, non-stop. That you don't see the end of that rope. That's how much bigger the afterlife is compared to the life. And we spend so much time worrying about some little dot on that little rope right there, and very little time, many of us, worrying or working for the rest of that rope. Focus on the afterlife for a little bit. Focus on God. Ask God to guide you. And if you're a Muslim, don't make it hard. Make it easy, right? I mean, unfortunately, like when you became Muslim, right? When I became Muslim, when anybody becomes Muslim, you discover that there's all these little groups. You know, Muslims are people. They're not some magical, mystical people that only do the stuff that's right. Muslims are people that commit sins, they do right, they do wrong, like everybody else. And so a lot of them will get tricked. They'll get tricked into thinking that I'm so righteous, I found the right path, and they become arrogant. And this arrogance is actually used by Shaitan to scare other people away. That's right. So don't make it hard, make Islam easy. Don't be judgmental, be forgiving. Inshallah. A lot of people will believe something today, and maybe next year they'll believe something different, and maybe your meanness, your arrogance towards them scared them away from what might be the true path, right. The correct Islam, right? The Quran and Sunnah of our Prophet, the Tawheed, the praying to Allah alone, right? You know, if some people have different ideas because of their culture, mixed some stuff into Islam, be friends with them. Show them the right path. Don't condemn them and yell at them, because all you're really doing is pushing them away from the right path.
That's right.
This is my advice to Muslims, because unfortunately I see this a lot too.
Jazakumullah khair, brother. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate that. It was a great message, mashallah, great project that you're doing. And once I put the information for your website and email, inshallah, you'll have some people who would love to help you and volunteer, inshallah. And may Allah bless you. And we're honored to have you as a mentor with our program also for the new Muslims. Jazakumullah khair, and inshallah we'll keep in touch. Barakallah Feikum. May Allah bless you.
Barakallah Feik. Thank you very much for taking the time today. And wa'iyak. Jazakallah khair for all the work you do.
Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Ma assalam.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Ma assalam.